Okay, Karen?
This presentation just brought out a lot of stuff for me. I get a lot out of it. On the one hand, it shows how philosophers can think, and abstracting is very, very much what we do in thinking. And so we're naturally very good at abstracting, and that can help people. That's the positive side. I'm not sure I understood Nelsonian, Socratic, all of that, but what I thought I understood is something like you have an experience and you tell all about this experience. And then the client, you're speaking as a client, you have an experience, and then you have another experience. And then the counselor recognizes that they're similar. So you can abstract from two different things. And, you want the client to get that aha moment of abstraction. That's a huge goal in counseling of any kind, I think. And philosophers are naturally good at it and apt to do it. But I wonder, I think of two different kinds of examples where in counseling, people have trouble abstracting. There's two kinds of responses. There's, I know we have a few people from India in the room, so I don't know if anybody else saw a YouTube of a gentleman who was on a cot or a bed in a garage. Whether he's working in the garage or he slept or he lived there, I have no idea. But there were trucks visible and all of this. And then this leopard comes in the corner of the room and comes and steals his dog and runs off with it. A little dog next to him. Okay, suppose this man is your client and he comes in and tells you about this horrible experience. Clients do that metaphorically. They come and tell you about a leopard or a tiger, and then the next day they tell you about a snake or something else. In my experience dealing with people in general, people want to vent very much about their experience of this leopard taking my dog, running off with my dog, how traumatic that is. And they don't have time, or they have very great difficulty abstracting how that could be anything like some other experience. So just getting them to abstract at all is a huge challenge. I don't know the answer to that. That's just what I find in dealing with people, how to get them to abstract. And then the other issue that happens when you're trying to help other people think and abstract, when you do it successfully, it's wonderful. That it's like a teacher, you see the light bulb going off over the person's head, and it's absolutely wonderful, But more often than not, in my experience, no matter how carefully I think and rationalize with people, to change the metaphor now, suppose I'm doing a jigsaw puzzle and you're putting in piece after piece. When you get to the final 10 pieces, the client knocks the whole puzzle over and runs out. There's something else going on besides reason. So, as I said, very intriguing presentation. I think it highlights the importance of reason, but how do we reach those irrational parts when they need reason, but then they throw it out, either because they can't abstract, or when they do abstract, they finally throw it all out anyway. I don't know if that followed. That was a long. I liked it very much, and I see questions beyond it. That's in a summary. So I don't know what you have to say to that, Kevin. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I will try to respond to that a little bit. So Nelsonian Socratic dialogue, to get this part of the way, is it's very difficult to understand without experience of it. And a lot of people say that, and you might think is that really true? It's definitely been true for me. Until you have some sort of experience of it, it's kind of hard to see what's going on. And Uh, yes, the process is a process of abstraction, but in my use with this particular client and in my use of the method with other clients, I've gotten some very interesting feedback here. Feedback that suggested or just directly said that the experience of philosophical counseling for these individual clients was actually more hands-on with their experience than psychotherapies. Because the psychotherapies were so concerned with sort of managing or providing techniques to help them manage it that often they just kind of looked over, did not provide the space for the client to actually talk through the experience with them. Now, I'm not saying that that's all psychotherapies. I guarantee you that there are many that do talk about experiences in great detail. But it was interesting to me, it's been interesting to me to receive the feedback that philosophical counseling is so hands-on with experience, because be we might think that it's just abstract up in the clouds or cloud cuckoo land or whatever, and it never touches our experiences. But client feedback suggests that it's incredibly hands-on. I would say, yeah, it's hard to get clients to abstract, but the method's really good. And I haven't found that I've had too much difficulty, not because of my own skills here, but because the method really kind of works. So I wouldn't really point to my own skills there. And it's just the method is very effective. I think I'd try to respond to what you've said.
Yes, you've done a wonderful job talking about this whole topic. And I think that's a wonderful response that you gave. Those of you who have not participated in a Socratic dialogue, I encourage you to do so. I know Lou is working with us online. And so there are wonderful opportunities. I think it's fascinating that this works so well with individual client sessions. This is a new approach to me, and I'm going to try it. So thank you very much. And I think your response to Karen was excellent and open, and that you're quite correct that at least certain types of counselors do connect with individual experiences a great deal more. Now, I do know some counselors who do not permit much narration of circumstances, and I think that's a mistake, and have said so in response to some of their papers at various times. So, other questions, comments? Oh, Patricia.
Hi, Kevin. Found your talk really great. Really, I took a lot out of that. I'm very glad about the news of your PhD, because when we last talked each other, maybe 1 year or 2 years ago, you were not in the PhD program. So I'm very happy of that. Really, I'm glad for you. And regarding your presentation, I really found very interesting the attention that you pay to the client history, which is a kind of things to think about that. I appreciate that. And the value of empathy between the client and the counselor, I really do share, and I appreciate that. And regarding the big topics, the big themes that you put the accent on, obligations and relationships, the relationship of your client or fans, that was really interesting to me. And my question is the process, and also I appreciate particularly the link that you make between Kantian and Socratic dialogue. You put them all together to work in order to work in your philosophical inquiry and discovering. So I really appreciate that. My question is the whole process of the philosophical counseling, passing from the concrete facts and object and experiences of your client with the matters that count for her, to the general abstraction and reflection upon. And so this kind of philosophical process, with all the philosophical meaning that you very well trace out at the end of your presentation, but along the process, along how much or in which way, at what level at what grade did your client share your philosophical conclusion or reading of the history? It was just that at the end you realize the value, and you are of course sharing that with us, that we all share that in our experience. Or you could build gradually a philosophical reading, a philosophical meaning, a philosophical reference during the process. That's my question. In which grade did your client share this beautiful and interesting process that you built up during your counsel? Am I clear? Or?
Yeah, so I think I've understood your question as asking a very important question, really. So after the history, I proposed what is obligation? And the question is, how much did they share this as something that was important to the history? Did they see that, and did they come to see it? I do emphasize in the paper that I don't think this is necessarily the issue, if there ever is a single issue. I do think it was an issue. I think that as I was reading my presentation, many of you probably thought of different topics. You may have thought of something different from what is obligation. And I think that would be perfectly okay, perhaps. The thing is, it's tested later by Nelsonian Socratic dialogue to see whether or not it's kind of useful to them. And in this case, Finn does say that it turns out having been beneficial to them, educational and, therapeutic.
Mm-hmm.
But before they got to that, how kind of arbitrary it was, I got to tell you, it's a good criticism. I don't really know how to respond to that. I wonder if someone else might. Yeah, Lou, I'll tag Lou in here for a second.
Okay, just briefly.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you.
Just briefly, and also back to Karen, Karen's question. It's really interesting, Kevin, that you've built this bridge between the group work that Nelson really pioneered and the individual one-on-one counseling. And I think it's a viable connection and very interesting one. But for just a point of general information for those in the meeting, and then Rick's hand is up, so he can go next. I just wanted to let people know that yes, we are training a cohort of certified facilitators of the Nelsonian method. There are folks in the room, colleagues in the room, who've already done at least one, and so in some cases both. We have another dialogue next weekend. We had about 30 people sign up for this some months ago. And once we have this cohort of trained facilitators, Ivana and I were trained years ago by the Dutch, and I'm doing the retraining. It works online, and that was a big experiment for us to see, if we could really do this. It works very well online. So we'll then, once we have a cohort of facilitators trained, be able to offer them, and you, Kevin, and others who are doing this, including Rick and Shanti, you'll be, and Bala, I know you'll be able to offer these through our website to everyone who wants to participate, not just practitioners, but the general public. So I think that's a great thing. And I'm so happy to see you make this connection. That's point 1 of 2. Point 2 of 2, just to underscore what you said, it's really been my experience too, Kevin, that clients don't always know what their real, quote unquote, what the deeper issue is that they need to work on. And Shanti's nodding. This happens a lot in psychology, and it happens a lot in medicine. People don't feel well, and they may have a very non-local, non-specific sense that something is not right with them, and they need to be tested, right? Often people need a battery of tests in order for a medical diagnosis to locate the actual problem that gives rise to a kind of general sense of unwellness. Sometimes it's specific, but not always. And when people come for philosophical counseling, similarly, they don't always know what really needs to be worked on, nor do they necessarily trust the counselor. It could be conscious or unconscious. They could test the counselor to see if they can build a, some kind of therapeutic alliance with them and really disclose what the issue is. Or they may simply be floundering in a general sense and not even be aware. And that way, your application of Nelson's method is a tremendous process by which to ferret out what the quote unquote real issue is that needs work. So I commend you for that, and I hope you'll continue to experiment with it and report back to us on further success. Okay, thanks a lot, Kevin.
I see that Rick has a question, and but before we get to that, I just like to say I agree totally with Lou that your paper is so interesting because this will enrich individual practice, and I'm very, very interested in that. Thank you very much for doing that, giving that paper, because we're all going to use, I think, that insight at various times in our own practice. Okay, Rick.
Yeah, thank you. That was a great paper, Kevin. I've been thinking about applying this method in individual cases. I even wrote it up on a slide that I was going to present in Romania, but my workshop didn't go that far because, philosophers, they raise a million questions. But I love this idea, and I've been thinking about trying it, formally. So I'm just curious, one other thing about the last set of remarks. Often clients come in thinking X is my problem, but really it's Y and Z or something else, And so like the history is always a really good way to figure out what are really the contours of this person presenting themselves to you, and what's really alive as opposed to what they say is alive. So the history is really important, but this method plus the history, I'm curious, do you explain the method to them before you engage in it? Like, do you go through it? Do you educate them so that they have this expectation? And I would imagine that might be helpful, because if they do, then they have a path that they know that they're expected to follow. I'm just curious how you actually did that. Oh, one more thing before you answer that. I think it would be great if, when you write this up and get it published in our journal, that you spell out those syllogisms with concrete, examples. A lot of it went by really quick and it was abstract. I'd love to see it, really carefully demonstrated when I read this so that I could absorb it better.
Thank you for that helpful note. I appreciate that. So to answer the question about preparation for the client, yes, I did prepare. I have prepared clients for its use. So the session, this one in particular, the session ended after we went through the history, which took the whole time, and it was at that point that I introduced the idea to them, and I got their consent to use the method. And so I had already explained very briefly the very complicated idea that we were going to work through. So I just kind of gave them a general idea. Here's what we're going to be doing. I think that you already have some kind of knowledge in what you've introduced to me that is kind of just tacit or implicit, and you maybe not incredibly aware of it. And we could maybe help work that into your awareness better through a particular method. And then I introduced the method by, here's what I'd like you to do by next time. Think of some personal experiences of the topic, which is how we were prepared in our training and the groups too, right? So because that process can take a long time. I know in my own personal experiences, I've taken a week to even think of a personal experience to use. So I wanted to give them that time to think about it too. And I explained a little bit about how we would, from that experience, work through it, the steps, the hourglass model. But I didn't do that in a whole lot of detail because I didn't think that much was necessary.
Great. Makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Excellent.
I have a related question, Kevin. I was wondering how long these counseling sessions run. that's always a question about Socratic dialogue. Americans are doing a very abbreviated, sometimes a group of sessions, whereas I know the Germans sometimes go on for months with this, or used to. And I think the Dutch do about a month sometimes. So I'm wondering how long it takes with an individual client. I mean, that varies, but I mean, just a general ballpark figure. So
Well, with an individual client, they can go much quicker than with groups where you're having people up against one another. So I have managed to get through working through a personal experience in something like about an hour. But I mean, they can't take longer. You find that you're not really finished. I mean, you're never really finished with these. It doesn't feel like, at least to me. But yeah, you can within a session maybe get through it. There have been cases where I felt like we left it undone and we had to pick up next time. But given that they're bringing many experiences and you might work through many of them closely, as opposed to when we do it in a group and we simply go back to your other experiences, I did work out each of their experiences as if that was the selected one in the beginning. So the process working through multiple experiences takes many, many sessions actually. And maybe that's helpful too for the abstraction process. If one of our goals is to help our clients to learn the abstraction process, then it's okay to use all of that time and effort to do that.
Thank you very much for a wonderful start to today's meeting, Kevin. That's fantastic. Looking forward to the write-up as well as Rick, as he mentioned. Let's take a coffee break, okay, or whatever you're imbibing at this hour, wherever you are. We will reconvene at 10:45. That's 13 minutes, okay? Please don't be late, and we will welcome Carol up next on the program. Okay, see you very shortly, everyone. 10:45. Thanks a lot again, Kevin. See you shortly.